Colorectal cancer is the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in the U.S., according to the American Cancer Society. The lifetime risk of developing colorectal cancer is about 1 in 22 for men and 1 in 24 for women, and the death rate from colorectal cancer has been dropping for several decades. Colorectal polyps are now being found more often by screening and removed before they can develop into cancers. Unlike many other forms of cancer, colon cancer is one of the most preventable cancers if it is detected early. While a colonoscopy offers the most comprehensive view of the colon, many people feel anxious about getting this screening.
Well, after 10 years of hosting Hometown Health and preaching the importance of early detection, I hit that milestone where a colonoscopy is recommended. My journey began with an initial consultation with Dr. Jason Smith, a relatively new addition to the AdventHealth Waterman general surgery team.
So what brings you in today?
50 years old, time for the colonoscopy.
The 50-year-old Mark. So your primary care physician told you that you needed a colonoscopy, and that's why you're here today, is that correct?
Yeah, recommended.
Dr. Smith took down some personal history about my health and then asked if anybody in my family had ever had colon cancer. A very important piece of information.
No.
And do you have any history of cancer yourself?
No.
After getting a few questions about my medical history out of the way, I had some questions of my own.
So why is it important, since I turned 50 years old, for me to have been proactive about coming in for colonoscopy?
So the American Colorectal Society has noticed that colon cancer kind of spikes around age 50, and specifically the precursor to colon cancer, which are colorectal polyps, okay? Now, if we do a colonoscopy and we see a polyp and we take it out, that polyp is no longer a risk to turn into cancer. However, if that polyp stays in place, that doesn't necessarily mean it is going to turn into cancer, but there is an increased risk for cancer. 50 years old is the recommended age for someone without a history. If you would have had a history of colon cancer in your family, the actual recommendation is 10 years before the earliest first-degree relative had colon cancer. So say, for example, your father had colon cancer at 53, you would be recommended to have a colonoscopy at 43. Of course, genetics is the most important factor, but things like smoking, eating a fatty diet, or eating a diet very high in protein is linked to increased polyps and cancer, along with smoked foods specifically being linked to colon cancer.
What else are we looking for during the process?
We're looking for anything that looks suspicious, okay? There can be abnormal changes in the superficial layer of the colon, for which we would take a biopsy. Any polyps we see, depending on the size and the character of the polyps, sometimes they can be flat like pancakes. Those are very difficult polyps to manage. When you get into the pancake polyps, the risk of the procedure goes up quite a bit, but like I said, that's pretty rare. If I go in and I do a colonoscopy on you and I find one small polyp, I'm likely just to recommend that you have another screening colonoscopy at 10 years. But if I go in and I find 3 or 4 or 5 very large polyps, then we may increase your screening recommendations to every 5 years because you're more likely to form polyps than somebody else may be.
Do you think people talk about this, they hear about this procedure, and they want to stay as far away as they possibly can from it?
Again, you are asleep for the procedure. You don't remember anything during the procedure. It is a painless procedure. The biggest headache is the night before because you have to take a colon prep and you need a clear liquid diet the day before. And then of course you have several bowel movements throughout the day, which can be a little aggravating and wake you up in the middle of the night. I mean, most people go back to work the following day after a colonoscopy, and it really is something that's recovered from quite quickly.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how awesome am I for being proactive in this?
Probably a 10 or an 11.
An 11?
Yes.
I'm an overachiever, I like that.
My thanks to Dr. Smith and his staff at AdventHealth Waterman for participating in this story. As you could well imagine, having a camera in the consultation isn't very common. Next month, we'll bring you the results of the colonoscopy. Meanwhile, you'll find a link to information on this story when you click the News of Note tab on our homepage, yourhometownhealth.com.